Good evening. Welcome to the Kinoshita lecture by well-renowned Pritzker Prize-winning Japanese architect, Professor Fumihiko Maki. My name is Diane Lam, a Year 2 Master of Architecture student from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Today, we are greatly honored to have invited Professor Maki to deliver his lecture at our university campus. First of all, may I invite Professor Nelson Chen, Director of the School of Architecture, to introduce our distinguished speaker. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, faculty colleagues, students, alumni, and friends of the School of Architecture. A very warm welcome to you this evening on this special occasion of the 2018 Kinoshita Lecture in Architecture. On behalf of the Chinese University of Hong Kong and our School of Architecture, we are very grateful and privileged for this opportunity to hear in a few moments from Fumihiko Maki, the internationally renowned award-winning architect from Tokyo, whose globally acclaimed design works are well known by many of us in this audience, judging by the size of the audience, which is going to be standing room only. Before introducing our distinguished speaker, I would like to acknowledge the long-standing generosity of Mr. James Kinoshita to support this annual lecture that bears his name, with the aim of inviting the most distinguished architects from overseas to come here and share their insights and experience with our students, as well as the architectural community in Hong Kong. Jim and his wife Lana are unavailable to join us this evening, but they are represented by their son Andrew. Please convey our best wishes to your parents on behalf of all of us. And now, it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce our guest speaker, Fumihiko Maki, who has practiced professionally for over 5 decades and is still going strong. He has been honored by the highest accolades of the architectural profession worldwide, including, in the US, the AIA Gold Medal, Thomas Jefferson Prize, Arnold Bruner Prize from the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the Wolf Prize from Israel, the Premium Imperial from the Japan Arts Association, and honorary fellowships in the Professional Architectural Institutes from 12 countries, including Australia, France, Germany, the UK, that's the RIBA, US, AIA, among others. Most notably, Fumihiko Maki was an early recipient of the Pritzker Prize, the Nobel Prize of our profession, and a Lifetime Achievement Award. But as he won this prize in 1993, 25 years ago, his was essentially a mid-career prize. Considering the magnitude of his work from then until now, it's too bad he's not allowed to win it twice. He was educated at University of Tokyo, then Cranbrook Academy of Art and Harvard Graduate School of Design. After receiving a Graham Foundation Fellowship, he was an associate professor at both Washington University in St. Louis and Harvard GSD, before eventually becoming a long-standing professor of architecture at the University of Tokyo. As a young academic, Professor Maki authored a highly influential treatise titled Investigations in Collective Form, first published in 1964. It was required reading for architectural students of my generation in the 70s. Come to think of it, I think it should be required reading for all our architecture students at CUHK today. Perhaps in reaction to the prevailing interest in those years of the megastructure, such as the Tokyo Project and others, this critical study by Professor Maki focused instead on the city as formed by open spaces rather than building masses, respecting the specific character of an urban site, the knitting together of buildings, urban spaces, streets, and footpaths. As he described it, collective form represented groups of buildings, not single structures unrelated to each other, but buildings that have reason to be together, especially over time, and the city as a pattern of events. At Hillside Terrace, this vision was realized as a kind of urban design lab that the practice of Mackey and Associates designed and realized incrementally over 23 years in 6 stages. Its lesson and legacy are for us to remember that while architecture may ultimately be art, it is always a social art in service of society. Our ultimate goal should not be designing iconic buildings as objects, but creating iconic places for people and their activities. Fast forward 5 decades, and I would like to highlight a recently completed project by Professor Maki called 4 World Trade Center, one of 4 towers surrounding the Ground Zero redevelopment site in New York City. The other buildings are Tower 1, the so-called Freedom Tower by SOM, over 100 stories tall. Tower 2, originally designed by Norman Foster, now by BIG, Bjarke Ingels. Tower 3, designed by Richard Rogers. And Tower 4 by Professor Maki, the smallest, but still a significant high-rise over 70 stories, all in accordance with the master plan originally 15 years ago by Daniel Libeskind. So towers 1, 3, and 4 are now completed. When the master layout plan and models were first published, I remember feeling puzzled, even somewhat worried by the Maki scheme. In the block model, it was the least figurative, the least dramatic. Was the minimalism taken too far? It appeared to me like a mismatch between a lightweight boxer versus heavyweights, and 3 of them in the ring. But the built reality of 4WTC turns out to be both a visual marvel and an urban lesson, with its angled geometries informed by urban sightlines, its structure appearing not as building volumes, but as dematerialized, reflective planar surfaces. In certain lighting conditions, this 70-story high-rise building virtually merges with the sky, then reemerges from another viewpoint. Thus, 4WTC does not try to outmuscle its neighboring towers with boxing. It's exercising Tai Chi, deflecting and gently pushing back the more aggressive formal moves of the others, and channeling the energy of its site context. In this ring, it's a clear winner by a knockout, a masterpiece of minimalism and a masterclass of urbanism with commitment to collective form. Now, there's an intriguing observation from Louis Sullivan that architectural works resemble their architects and personalities. So let's consider some examples. Say, Richard Rogers, with his outgoing personality and brightly colored shirts, compare with his buildings of exposed structure and service ducts, typically in bright primary colors. That works. Or Tadeo Ando, a former boxer in his youth, with his raw concrete boxes and hard-edged geometries. Or the late Zaha Hadid, extroverted and outspoken personality, wearing flowing capes and collars. Now think about the expressive, free-flowing forms of her parametric designs. When considering the designs of Fumihiko Maki, they are also very much like the architect himself, reflecting a refined balance of simplicity, elegance, integrity, honest expression, gracious personality. His buildings are always thoughtfully considered, crisply geometrical, understated, yet bespeaking of lasting quality. It's an architecture that is quiet but persuasive. No need to shout its important message. His work is imbued with unified clarity, yet respects the complexity and variety of modern life with remarkable sensitivity and spirit, from overall form to final detail, at every step with exceptional care and craft. His architecture is not of the moment or trends or styles, but about timeless, enduring values, what I would identify as having less concern for what's first, and instead a profound commitment to what lasts. Thus, fittingly, the title of tonight's lecture is Towards a Humane Architecture. It is truly with great personal pleasure and professional admiration that I introduce to you Professor Fumihiko Maki.
Thank you very much for introduction by Professor Chen. I'm also very honored to be back to Chinese University here to give a talk on Kinoshita lectures. So I must just start with who I was, because here quite many young people do not know the time I was brought up. The one on the left, my mentor in the University of Tokyo, whom I studied but also taught together later. Then my mentor in GSA Harvard was Jose Rizot. Jose Rizot is Spanish and came to GSD when I became a student, 1953. But also I taught with him later. I had a chance to associate with the metabolist people. We produced our manifesto in 1960 when we had our first international conference in Tokyo. Myself, Kikutake, Kurokawa, and Otawa. But also, on that particular year, I was invited by Peter Smithson to attend one of Siam meetings in Bagnols-sur-Cèze in South France. And I was able to meet Bakema, Van Eyck from Netherlands, Giancarlo Picarro from Italy, then Candeles from Paris and so on. So thought often invited those people to GSD, where I also met many of them several times. But the people all respected Le Corbusier at that time, without any question. But he also influenced architect by wearing bow tie. I was wearing a bow tie when I was giving a presentation on my first project as an architect in Washington, New York. And I was amazed when I visited the Harvard later. Their archive had a collection of bow ties worn by Walter Gropius, Marcel Breuer, and I'm sure Le Corbusier. But I have written the short essay called Modernism on the Open Sea. And my understanding was that until end of 1970, we all architects on the same boat called modernism, heading maybe unknown places. But with the Corbusier, Mies van der Rohe, Arthur, and all those Franco Wright as guest of honors in the same board. But then, modernism became one big information center. And together with that, this board disappeared. And we were thrown into an open sea with no manifesto or team meetings, etc. But still, each architect must find his way to a wave, to go. And I think I'm not going into a lecture on modernism, but my contention is that fortunately, sea is not flat. They have some waves. And with my contention is that kind of a humanism with empathy might be one on which we can make our own swimming. Then I like to show some of projects I have done in the recent past, both in Japan and abroad. The one I'm showing is Kazenoka Crematorium. I did in 1997 in a small city in southern Japan. And here you see a crematorium, but the mayor asked us to do it in a big park because crematorium is not the welcome facilities in Japan quite often. So we try to merge the building as a pieces of a sculpture into a large park. We have also the existing cemetery and the remain of some old ancient things. So it consists as like a necropolis. And we made our ground to raise, to cut off the height of elements in crematorium. So people in here may not be too much aware where they are in front of crematorium. Sketches. And you come into an entrance. Then through here, you go into a next space where you have a fast goodbye to disease. Then you come into a crematorium proper, where you give a final farewell. And after that, you wait for an hour or so until the body was cremated. And I think this is the way we make our crematorium. And after I made this project, I visited the city, and many people said, "Thank you, Mr. Maki. Now we can die in peace." This is the highest compliment I ever received as an architect. Just like running the restaurant, the people come for the Last Supper. But anyway, it might have hit kind of an unconscious wish the people or society have. I think this seems to be a very important experience. Yes, you see, you go into the enshrined room where friends, relatives come and share the ashes and the bones, and into a small white ceramic bowl and go home. That was the whole process of the. Now I come into hillside terrace, which I did very slowly over the 25 years in 6 phases. Fortunately, it has a wide street, but also very low density situation with only 10 meters high to allowed and 150% the FAR. So we are able to produce kind of sequences of small open spaces, corner plaza, sunken garden, and then second phase, central plaza, and etc. And so those things could have a kind of a public exposures, but with a humane sort of environment. And you could see a number of small spaces with still many greens left. And I think it gives us a lesson. You like to have a good public access, but not so high density situations, low density, sometimes able to make. We are very lucky to have this kind of things. Otherwise, we have not been able to make sequences of spaces. You see corner central plaza, and also existing small shrine, and the building was made by surrounding it. And also a number of the trees are quite effective in making a humane environment. So you could see from this the diagram that we try to make many public spaces in red color, to like corner galleries, sunken auditorium, and big galleries with the cafe and so on to give an intimate. This is an interesting chart. The UCLA people listed about 150 modernism architecture in 20th centuries, and asked some architects which building should be seen by young people, students. They are not asking which one is the most beautiful building or newest building. Instead, the building, by looking at, you might be able to learn something. And the best score was given to Miss Van der Rohe, Barcelona Pavilion. But then, Hillside Terrace came together with several Le Corbusier's buildings. And I felt very honored to be on this upper part of this. Anyway, then I would like to show to some of the latest university project we have done at the center of the city. And the first phase was completed 2012, 3 of them. Then last year, we completed one. The most uniqueness of this campus was that it's in a highly dense situation in Tokyo with well-used the public rail stations where about 1 million people passes every day. And the ward office requested that people should be able to move freely in the university. So there is no gate, no wall. And certain places, only university people can go, will be through this card. And now you could see there is a public street dividing the campus into two. But with these bridges, anybody can go up or go into. And just behind, they outsource some popular Italian restaurants. And in the front, we made a loggia. Loggia is a well-known city room in many cities in Italy, like Bologna. You have many of them. And similarly, we are able to have this loggia for people who are not students, but just live and chatting sometime. And sometimes students can give music of improvisation and so on. So it was very well used. And behind is a restaurant and also galleries open to public. And now, across the street, there is a main plaza with the students' cafe in the front, but also the people in this area use this place. But one of the most important things is that some kindergarten teachers brings the children here because the campus may not be too big, and they love to come for such a big places. So this is probably one of the first times university campus could be used by children. And you could see some children hugging the round columns. They may remember when they hug mothers, they're young, or hug. So I recommend when you young architects here design the kindergarten, please use round columns, not square columns. We learn quite a bit out of what we have done. It's a kind of a pleasure of our practice. And evening, when there is some gathering, the frontal wall become this kind of things, and people gather. And sometimes we have small festivities, and Mikoshi could go through the campus. So it's completely integrated with the daily life of neighborhood. Now I go into MIT campus. As you know, we created this one in 2009. And our client, Nicolas Negroponte, asked us, please make the building like a big house. And we interpreted big house as a kind of a place when one can find own place in relation to the rest. In the house, when you are living room, you expect the kitchen will be the next, and also the bedroom will be somewhere next. So this kind of awareness would come out of this basic principle. And we thought, we have been asked to make 7 laboratories with a big open sort of space and with a mezzanine for the senior persons. And we had 7 of them, and they are staggered together like this way. And also we made the partitions all transparent. So people have the kind of view through horizontally, and we have a big open space, so vertically or even diagonally. And by doing it this way, we are able to produce this kind of a building. And this building a few years ago received a Halston Prize. It's one of the best, most beautiful buildings in Cambridge, Boston area. And it's a detail, and in Boston areas, you are not allowed to have open, clear glass facade anymore. But by providing aluminum screen, we are able to do that, to cut off unnecessary sort of heat in the daytime. And so evening, it becomes quite transparent. And it's connected to existing media lab designed by Ian Pei. And we have this kind of openness. And you can see how these 7 studios are interconnected. It's a detail. In this way, at the central plaza on the third floor, people can gather for lunch on Friday. And sometimes this place becomes for a disco in the evening. It's a view of studios. And just below the top floor, we have a small cafe for people. And when you go up, there will be a small open space looking at silhouette of the Boston. Then 2007, we did Republic Polytechnic in Singapore, near the Malaysian Strait. The place used to be a British prison camp, still snakes there, but Polytechnic able to have half of them and have this kind of the appearance. And you could say the organization is based on collective form we created, we suggested in 1964. Professor Chen just mentioned this collective form. And there are a number of similar studios, like a group form, but with a huge sort of a plateau underneath to create kind of a megaform. Then compositional sort of a placement on administration, cultures, and garage, etc. This is a gymnasium and the housing for people. You could say the system learning is different from ordinary the classroom versus teaching student. Instead, they are solving the certain learning problem. This system originated in England, was brought in here, where students are given the problem by tutors in the morning, and later afternoon, they must come back in individual or group to report their finding. So this yellow space we call agora becomes very important for students gathering. And there are many places like cafe or the library and so on. But we use same principle of open, transparent system. It's like a boulevard and with a small opening to avoid direct sun coming into a place because it's a tropical place. And the wireless sort of a library where people are able to discuss the problems and so on. And also, as you know, Singapore, Singaporean is made of 70% Chinese, 20% Malaysian, 10% Indian. So Malaysian students sometimes give us singing. Chinese students give this kind of festive object. And we made also a snake type, the benches where students can just gather and chat. But one of the most important things is that the center, they created small cafe and also billiard ball. And this seems to be only campus where the central part has a billiard ball. But altogether, people are also able to sit just by themselves, to avoiding the group thing. And then I go into Aga Khan Museum, which was made 2014. And Charles Collier did the Ismaili Center. We've been asked to make very light-sensitive building. I received His Highness Aga Khan 5 pages of letters when I started this project. And he asked the Islam architecture is very sensitive to natural light. So we decided to find out whitest granite in the world. It took a year and a half. And finally, we found it in Brazil. It's called Margarita. So when I have a pizza, always I remember this stone. And you could see. And I tried to make 2-story high building, slightly slanted, to also give a different reflection of light. It's a natural way to express 2-story building. And one thing important in the museum is that, like, we do not have too many openings on the exterior. So the central plaza becomes very important. When you look at Greek old cities, houses, they are nestled together. So they all have the central plaza to which their activities will be oriented. And sometimes the funeral takes place in these places as well. And so we had a similar idea with a central court and foyer for the hall and entrance for museum proper, restaurant, information center, children's school, etc. And people are able to come here freely and only pay a gate at entrances of galleries and foyer when some events are taking place. But His Highness always advocates pluralism. And he said he can make the building very modern when you look at from outside. But please make Islam ambiance when you go into inside. So we use some Islamic patterns on floors and so on. But also, people are able to come and it becomes kind of a small community centers. And when nothing is going on court, then people can come out and chat. It's a very friendly sort of a space. Sometimes wedding also takes place in here as well. Galleries. It's all Islamic art. And Chinese love 8 as a lucky number. And Islam loves 7 as a lucky number. So we try to use 7 sort of show. This is the Singapore Media Corp we completed 3 years ago. This was a site. And the master plan was done by Zaha Hadid. That's the reason why they are not straight sort of Cartesian street. And our site also surrounded by her street. Had we had a very low density project, we could have a square building, but not. It's a very demanding sort of a special situation. So we said, why don't we use Zaha's curve for our building as well? And it has the fairly large auditorium, main studio, and sub-studio, and with the offices on top. It's a fairly complex building. And also, we use stainless steel to clad this building to give a better reflection. And those curves are all Zaha's curve, you know. And the stainless steel facade was made by YKK, one of the biggest zipper companies. And they now it's very active in making a facade. And construction was done by Kojima. So it's the first time I had an all Japan sort of a team for this project. So it is Zaha's sort of curve. And here, the center has an open plaza on top from which you could look down the park. From the park side. And the offices is open offices. People are able to come on particular space they like to use in every day. And also, tourists are able to go through to look down in here. And I think this is a kind of a media complex where not only television and the radio, but also some kind of publishing is also done on this building. Very dynamic, sort of open spaces and with different sort of ambience. Now I come into Shenzhen, SeaWorld Culture and Arts Center. I'm sure some of you might have seen this building. And when we are brought into a site, I was told this is one of the nicest sites you could find in Shenzhen for this kind of facility, because it directly faces to water and looking at Hong Kong. And behind, you are able to have a mountain. Then also all surrounded by existing the Shenzhen development. So we decided to have this as a kind of a people's hill. And anybody can freely go up to top and look at, enjoy the view to all other places, or can go inside to find out the places you like to go. You see this particular. And we decided to have a 3 strong sort of protrusion to indicate 1 to water, sea, and to then park and mountain and city behind. So the landscaping we did also is well integrated with the roof garden as well, as you see it. And you are on the entrance and looking at the building through the entrance hall. So there are 2 large outdoor stairways leading you to top, and also inside some kind of open public space as well. Now you see this kind of stairways inviting for people to rest on some places or to go up to top. This picture was taken 2 days after the opening. Already some musicians coming and playing, and people are gathering here and looking at the waters. And this is a very spontaneous improvisation done by people. We haven't expected this kind of scenery, but it's always pleasure when we are able to see unexpected scenery, like this university campus where children play. From front. And it is very interesting when people come here. Many of them looking at Hong Kong, not looking back the Shenzhen. And maybe they have some kind of a special wish, but anyway. You see the bottom, we have developed a kind of a greenery which could go up to the top. You see, people are all looking at Hong Kong side. Then you have indoor open spaces and surrounded by a number of facilities. Entrance hall is a special columns we made to make it a little bit iconic, symbolic. So on. And it's a central gallery run by Design Society for Victoria Albert Museum. And is gallery in different wing, and our exhibition, which is going on until end of June. Now I go to India. I took these pictures 1959 when I was making the Journey to the West under Grant Foundation Fellowship. And I was amazed by the number of the people and the massive vegetation, and also the massive building made by British colonies. So this image always stayed in to me. And when we designed the new museum of Bihar state on a site called Patna. Patna is the capital of the Bihar state. We are given 500-meter long site. And so we decided to make the whole building like campus. And the program asked also children's museum someplace. And then we produce central building where all people come in, go into the gallery proper. But we decided to use Colton weathering steel because the iron is originally developed in India, and with the sandstone. Unfortunately, in India, quite often the maintenance of public buildings are not so good. So I think combination of the Colton, weathering steel, and the sandstone could be easier to maintain the building. So they are not like with exposed concrete. Instead, we decided to use those two materials to cover the exteriors of this project. So you could see the Colton, the wall, and stone as a base. And there is an office portion at center. But those louvers all so crowded with these stones and so on. Now it's open, and there are several courts, and you are able to come into this central entrance. And this purest, the iron towers would not rust. Entrance court, looking at another court behind. Court surrounded by main galleries and with some bridges. And the light is always very strong. So this kind of opening give an interesting sort of a layer of lightness. On the children's museum, by request of client, we use terracotta instead of, but also it's a good material to be used in India. And children's museum was opened 2 years ago, and you could see the opening scene. And the amazing thing is that sometimes 3,000 students come to a museum in one day. It could happen only 300 in Japan. So again, I mentioned to you the massiveness of people always happen in even this museum. I was chatting with somebody. You see, our partner is below Nepal, and quite many interesting places related to Buddhism. So there are many Buddhist sculpture remnants being found out still. Now I go into one of my last projects in New York, the WTC redevelopment. This picture was is in the New York Times when we architects all got together to show what we have done in 2005. You see Richard Rogers and Norman Foster, Daniel Lipskin, who did a master plan, Governor Pataki, our client, Silverstein, and myself. And our building happens to be on the fourth. First one was done by the Skidmore Wings Mill. Then Norman Foster, Richard Rogers, and ours. But two small courts are where the old World Trade Centers, two skyscrapers, but now it became Santa Court and netted with the big sort of trees and a very nice place for people to come. And we try to make glass sculptures which could give different reflection depending on the weather, orientation, and day. This is a view from Fifth Avenue side. Now it's here, Richard Rogers, the building comes here. So you could not see this kind of view anymore. This is a very interesting picture I took 1993, right after World Trade Center was completed. I was taking an Amtrak from Philadelphia to New York, and you see there's no financial center, so the beautiful shadows cast on the Hudson River. And also, I have never received so many pictures from people unknown. And sometimes people said, our building disappeared. And he sent 2 pictures showing one with our building and number 1, and then nothing. So in a way, our building accidentally became homage to people who expired here. Then our building faces to Central Park. And people come here to just love wonderful park ambiance. And entrance court. This view was taken when we had an opening ceremony. And from 3rd floor, where we have Italian restaurant, people are able to look down court like this way. Now we go to a field. Okay.
Hi, my name is Yusuke Kushima. I'm a Japanese architect. I'll be hosting this program. Today, I'm in New York. It's September 11th, a very special day. As we all know, 13 years ago, a terrible tragedy has happened. I myself remember when I used to live in the States, there was a twin tower, a very symbolic building right behind us, and now it's gone.
On September 11, 2001, terrorists launched multiple attacks against the United States, bringing down the iconic World Trade Center towers in New York and killing roughly 3,000 people. Where the Twin Towers once stood, there is now a memorial dedicated to the victims, featuring giant reflecting pools in the footprints of the towers. Around the pools are slabs of black granite with bronze plaques on which the names of all the victims are inscribed. In the 13 years since the horror of 9/11, an endless stream of visitors has brought their flowers and prayers to this site. Next to the memorial, there are newly built skyscrapers.
One of the skyscrapers is designed by a Japanese architect. He's a very important Japanese architect who created the modernism and the contemporary architecture today, Fumihiko Maki.
Fumihiko Maki is one of Japan's most renowned architects. He designed the new 4 World Trade Center building. 2 years after 9/11, redevelopment plans for the World Trade Center were announced. 4 skyscrapers to be designed by world-famous architects. In November 2013, Maki's building was the first of the 4 to be completed.
Two, three. All right.
In September 2014, Maki came to New York and paid a visit to the building he designed.
How do you know I'm Maki?
I know because I looked at the plans and I met you when the tower opened up in November 2013. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, I see. You have a
A good memory. Thank you. Beautiful tower. Beautiful. Thank you.
Four World Trade Center rises 977 feet, about 300 meters. It has 72 above ground and 4 below ground floors.
非常に挑戦的なコミッションでもあったわけですね。ガラスで一つの彫刻作ろうっていう、そういう意思がかなり初めからあったということですね。
The dominant feature of the building is its glass facade. A special process was used to make the glass reflect light like stainless steel or aluminum, creating a mirror of the sky and nearby building. 4 World Trade Center often melts away into its surroundings. Maki created a building that is unobtrusive and elegant. The lobby of the building is an airy open space with 13-meter ceilings. The floor-to-ceiling windows make the adjoining Memorial Plaza clearly visible from the lobby. And opposite the windows is a black wall that extends to the ceiling.
こにブラックグラニットの壁にしまして、でこれはミラーエフェクト、鏡の役目を果たしている。で向こうのメモリアルパークが全部、映り込むという形で強い関係性をやはり作りたいっていうのが一つの考え方ですね。
The water, trees, and sky, key elements of the Memorial Plaza, can also be felt inside the building. Moreover, on the back wall of each of the 3 elevator halls, video of flowing water, green trees, and blue sky runs on a loop.
So それ見てみんなが入るわけですけど、帰ってくると今度はメモリアルパークが見えると、そういうイメージの関係を作ろうっていう。
Before 9/11, Maki had visited New York countless times and seen the Twin Towers, of course. Here is a photograph he took in 1993 of the towers reflecting the sunset. September 11th, 2014. Huge crowds fill the Memorial Plaza. Standing beside the vast reflecting pools which testify to the Twin Towers that once soared here, visitors contemplate the tragic events of 9/11. What do the visitors think of Maki's 4 World Trade Center building?
I think it's great. I think they did an excellent job. You know, it looks pretty tall and nice. I haven't been inside yet, but I'm hoping to.
I think also it's a wonderful piece of architecture. It reflects the beauty of the city, the beauty of the souls that are unfortunately expired here in this area, and we love coming here. It brings such a warm feeling, much emotion.
Maki's tower reflects something more as well, the thoughts of those who come to the memorial.
Now, at the beginning, I show you the crematorium, and then for WTC. And in a way, I was very pleased that 2 buildings project appreciated by ordinary people. And somehow, by making these buildings, I begin to understand how architecture should be made. Maybe for a kind of humans. I had a quite an interesting experience a few years ago in Madrid. I was visiting one of my friends there, and he took me to Piazza San Diego, where Opera House faces. And the people are looking at these pictures. And I asked my friend, what's going on? It's Opera Verdi, and done by, sung by Domingo. And I said, free? But I thought culture should be able to disseminate this something freely, not always charging. And to me, similar things happened when I visited the Panathinaiko Stadium in 1959. This was a picture also I took when I made a journey to the West, like going to India. And amazing thing. It's open, and perhaps just like this Domingos singing, people are able to see inside without pain. And 2004, there is again Olympic in Athens. And I was able to see exactly same scenery, but with maybe a little more people. And sometime when there is games going on, this place will be dotted by the people's clothing and so on. Either one is beautiful. And I think this is one of the best, the urban design done in Amy. And it still sits in this way. And I encourage you to look at this one with this. Then it hit. It's a kind of an unconditional love. I understand this word appears in Bible. And I think our cultural act should be based on unconditional love. But there are many conditional loves, like by Donald Trump, who divides their country into two, for or against. Fortunately, we are in a profession where we can exercise unconditional love. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Maki, for sharing your words of wisdom and projects with us. Now, may I invite Professor Chen to present a souvenir to Professor Maki to express our appreciation. Now, may I invite Mr. Andrew Kinoshita to represent Mr. James Kinoshita, donor of our Kinoshita lecture series, to join for a group photo.